I didn't know how to speak to the kids, and I didn't know to explain cremation. When we drove, I remember the first cemetery we drove past, and I remember Jordan was like, so if my daddy got cremated, is he in there?
Hello, and welcome to Guess Who Died, a podcast where we talk about who died and how we feel about it with Jeff, myself, Julia, and producer Casey in the back. All right, Jeff, let me ask you again. Who died?
Well, today I picked somebody other than an athlete.
Thank goodness. All right.
Gene Hackman.
Yes, and his wife.
Yes. The story is still rolling out as to what really happened to them both. One thing that did come out is we should, as caregivers, if we're giving care to somebody, take care of yourself too.
Yes.
That was a very important thing that came of that. Great actor. What was he, 94, I believe, when he passed?
Yes.
And yes, I was first introduced to him on the movie screen, Superman, as Lex Luthor. The Birdcage.
Oh, yes.
With Robin Williams. The roles spanned every genre. The Unforgiven, The Quick and the Dead. There's some westerns there that just classics. He led a great life and will be missed.
Oh, that story, I've been following it because it still is unfolding, and it is just whatever way you play it, it is tragic. And just to remember to check on your loved ones, even if no matter their age, I think just that is, yeah.
All right, Julia.
I'm going to bring the one that I know you're not going to bring because I know the other one, but I'm not as connected to that one. Michelle Trachtenberg died.
I was familiar with her.
Oh, gosh. I was a huge Buffy fan. I still am.
Mm-hmm.
And she was one of the main characters in that show. And I grew up with her. She was right around my same age. And just a tragic. She had just had a liver transplant and something went wonky, I think, there. But so young. She was only 39.
And again, checking on people. She was alone in her apartment, correct?
She was. Yes, exactly. I know. Not that we have to take everyone onto our shoulders, but it is. Community is so important now more than ever.
Sometimes a phone call or a drop by is all it takes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Michelle, rest in peace.
Yes.
I remember Michelle Trachtenberg through, was it Euro Trip? The movie Euro
yes.
Trip? Yeah. She was funny in that one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Gossip Girl, Harriet the Spy. I mean, she's,
Yeah, I had to suffer through Gossip Girl with my wife. So.
Oh, did you? You loved it. You loved it.
It kind of grew on me after a while, I'm not going to lie.
XOXO, guess who died? All right, Casey.
Okay, well, Julia knows I'm definitely going to bring one to the scene, but before I go there, I do have to give shout out to, who died recently within our ranks, a local celebrity of sorts. Our dear friend Judy Wolfman just passed away. Judy volunteered at Olivia's house for many, many years, but she was a storyteller. She was an actor. She was an author. She wrote many books, one about Milton Hershey. And she worked at Olivia's house on a couple of different video productions with me. She was just a very bright, energetic soul. And we will miss her. We will definitely miss her. Yes. At Olivia's house, she was one of the advocates for bring things other than cookies as snacks. So we will miss Judy for that. But other personality of who we are missing. Guess who died, Jeff? George Foreman.
Yeah, I knew one of us could cover that.
George Foreman.
I know. Casey texted me, did you hear about George Foreman? I said, we got to get on the mic. It was 9 p.m., but we were ready to get in the studio because that's a big one.
Yeah.
Well, you cannot deny the cultural influence that he had, not only as a boxer, but then the grill.
That's I mostly know him.
A businessman, right?
Like very, very smart man.
Yeah.
And did he make it work for him or what?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I don't think, if I remember the story correctly, and I heard an interview with his son at one point, he didn't invent the grill. Like, they wanted him to be a spokesperson for it. Mm-hmm. And he said, no, only if I can own it. And it was some sort of arrangement where it became his. And again, business acumen.
Which son, George, or George?
Right, exactly. Exactly.
Did you have one?
Or
Did you have a grill?
Of course, I had one of the Foreman grills.
Same
Did you,
here.
Julia? Yeah.
Oh yes, I got it at a yard sale, but I had it.
I think that's like the evolution. Everyone was like their first out of college. Well, that's how I cooked meat.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
I made my cheeseburgers on there, and
Yes.
absolutely. Every iteration, like that thing evolved over the years.
It
Oh
really
yes. Oh yes.
We had an early version when I was a teenager, and we had one down in the basement I just got rid of probably last year that wasn't being used. but it worked for him
Yeah.
and a lot of other people. So, yeah, George, man, you don't hear much about him. It's just like Gene,
Yeah.
and then they're gone.
Yeah.
And it's an icon that's gone, but what a life.
And spanned so many years. I mean, obviously, we know him from the grill and the business side of things. And as a boy, going back later and seeing his fights and seeing who he was as an athlete, holy moly, he was a force to be reckoned with.
And I didn't know until trivia that he had won the Olympic gold medal.
Yeah.
So he was a gold medal winner. He boxed in the 70s, came back around in the late 80s into the 90s, and won the oldest heavyweight champion ever.
Yeah. Just
Wow.
phenomenal career.
That is insane. Yeah, I mostly knew about the grill, so I didn't even know what sport he was in.
And did you know that all of his children were George?
I didn't. No, that's funny.
So you laugh. Thank you.
Yeah, that I like. That's fun. That's something I would do. I named my first cat Julia, so why not do it?
perfect.
And then your second cat's Julia as well?
It was Julie and Julia, so I could at least differentiate. And guess which one was my favorite? Julia.
The next one's Julia Gulia.
That's right, exactly. Oh my gosh. Well, I cannot wait to get into our guest today. We are about to have an awesome person on. I can't wait to introduce you to Cari. She has a cool story to tell and puts all of her heart into everything she does. So stay tuned on Guess Who Died to find out a little bit more about who died. Olivia's House is an independent, freestanding, nonprofit grief and loss center that supports children and their families before, during, or after a loss, all at no cost. When death enters your house, you are welcome at our house, where families are met with professional care, expert guidance, and resources for children and teens of any age. Nestled in central Pennsylvania, Olivia's House continues to be the premier independent grief and loss center. Welcome back to Guess Who Died, a podcast about who died and how we feel about it with Jeff, Julia, producer Casey, and joining us now is our guest, Cari. Welcome, Cari.
Thank you.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, great. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
It's good to have you here, Cari. So I'm curious, does the name of the podcast, Guess Who Died, does that trigger anything for you? Did you have a reaction to it when you heard it?
I saw it up there, but I didn't know that was the name of the podcast. So, but no, I'm interested.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued.
Yeah. So
Yes.
we talk about who died, how we feel about it, and having you here is our question is head out to you. So we want to know in your world, who was it that died? Tell us a little bit of your story, Cari.
Okay, so November 6, 2012, the father of my kids passed away. My two small children, they were small at the time, 4 and 5. Their names are Aaron and Jordan, and their dad had passed away.
Young kids.
Very young, yes.
How was it that he died?
It was tragic. So he was sitting in his car. It was late at night on November 5th, and he had just gotten off work, went to a friend's house. He was in a parking lot, just like on his phone before he was ready to go inside to hang out. And two young, I'd say teenagers, young adults were walking by and saw him sitting there. And I found out later that they wanted his car, so they opened the door to like carjack him and just started shooting. And he was able to exit the vehicle. There were witnesses that at that point had like looked out the window. They said that he like was like, yo, 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 you know, and every time he was hit. And then he was able to run towards the house that he was going to. They opened the door, and he walked in, and he collapsed. And by the time the police got there and cleared the perimeter of the building, They rushed him to York Hospital, and he died in surgery about 1:30 in the morning on November 6th.
How did you find out?
So Tuesday, that was the day of the Barack Obama Mitt Romney election of 2012. And I had always taken my kids anytime there was like a local election. Like I thought it was very important to include them in that. So we woke up like any other morning, had breakfast, got them ready, went to vote, and I dropped them both off at our nanny's, like the caretaker. And I was heading to work, and I remember driving down Route 30, and I was turning onto Susquehanna Trail, and I got this weird call on, and the guy on the other end, he kept saying like, do you know Ed Green? And I was like, yeah. So, and I kind of got defensive with him. I thought it was like a bill collector for the father of my kids. And I was like, who's this? And he had said, this is York County Coroner's Office calling. And that didn't click for me he probably said it like 4 or 5 times. And I'm like, wait, who's calling? Like, what do you need? And then he said, can you please pull over? Are you driving? And I said, yeah. And he's like, please pull over. And I pulled over into a Rutter's. And I worked right around the corner. And then he said, this is York County Coroner's Office. There's been a terrible accident. And Ed Green has passed away. And so like at that, it's very blurry after that. I think I drove the rest of the way to work. I walked in. I told my boss what was going on, and I didn't really believe it. And he was Googling at the same time. I was trying to call my sister. I was trying to get a hold of my mom. And then it popped up on the Google on the computer, and he was like, oh, my gosh. And after that, I think my sister came to my job, I think. And then it's all a blur for the rest.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
I was going to say, that's that early part of the bereavement process when there's a whole section of your brain that completely shuts off and just doesn't even allow you to react. And that's how you were able to drive and put your foot on the gas pedal and get to work, even though your brain wasn't fully functioning, but you're not retaining memories really.
Yeah.
Did you get the boys? They were in with their nanny. I mean, what was the next step with them?
Yeah. So Aaron was in afternoon kindergarten, and Jordan was in preschool, and that was a day he was in Monday, Wednesday, Friday preschool, so he wasn't going to preschool that day. And I remember thinking, like, if I go get Jordan while Aaron is in kindergarten, like a lot of people in the family were coming, like my cousins were coming over, and my aunts had arrived, and my dad was coming. We found my mom, like she was a nurse, and to track her down in her job. And so I remember thinking, like, Aaron needs to go to school. I'm not going to get Jordan. I'm just going to have them bring the kids later. Because if one had walked in and the whole family was there, like I needed to tell them together. Yeah. So the nanny showed up. It was probably about 4:30. We called the school to let them know that a different person was going to pick them up and what was going on. Fuzzy details. But I remember the nanny brought them, and at that point, my whole family was pretty much there.
And you told them together with the family.
Yes. Yeah.
How do you even have that conversation with?
I think I said, like, there's been a terrible accident, and Daddy was hurt really bad by 2 people. And Jordan, the 4-year-old, I remember him just kind of like, he wore these little glasses. And I remember, sorry.
No, you're fine.
I remember him like looking up at me in like confusion and like, I don't understand this. And Aaron, who was 5 at the time, I think he understood right away, and he just kind of put his head down in his hands and just started crying. You know, yeah,
Breaks your heart.
it is. It's still. I haven't thought about that moment in a long time.
Thank you for going there.
Yeah, it sounds like you're just going automatic when you found out the news, and then did you feel numb, just numb all over as you're leading into talking to the boys later that afternoon?
I think there was a general feeling of, I don't know what to do and I don't know how to do this. And I don't know what the next step is. There was a whole lot behind the scenes going on also. Like the parents, Ed was not close with his family. They all lived in Harrisburg, so they're calling his parents to tell them what happened. Ed and I had broken up, I want to say 2 years before, like a little more than 2 years before this. So we weren't together. We were just really good co-parents, and we had like established a friendship, and it was all about the kids, and he was a really good dad. So telling his parents, that was a whole thing, and just figuring out like the arrangements after that, and there was a lot there. They weren't very nice to me in the process, and
That doesn't make it any easier at all.
No.
And you mentioned too, you said off air as well, that this was a very public story, that this was front page news.
Yes.
What was that like? Because that is a unique experience to navigate.
Yeah. So as we went through, that first day of Ed's passing, one of the people that was the perpetrator in this, he had shot somebody the day before on Roosevelt Avenue in the head in broad daylight, and that guy lived. So that guy, I guess he was taken into surgery. They were able to save his life. So these two people from the night before were on the news as being wanted and suspicious in this other crime that had happened. So I think ultimately why Ed was a target was because they were wanted for this other thing that had happened the day before. They wanted his car, and they wanted a getaway vehicle out of the city, and their faces were all over the news and all of that. So that projected us right into the spotlight, and there were news and online news and that were, when they spoke of Ed, they spoke that he was homeless, like a homeless man, and he wasn't. So that was really upsetting and to still read the articles today. He had gone through a rough time, but he stayed at our house a lot. Like he had a key to my house, and he was welcome to stay there anytime. So when it was his weekend, he would come to the house and I would leave. So I forget what that term is. It's like nesting parenting, co-parenting or something.
Yes.
But we had been doing that long before anybody else.
Invented it.
Yes,
Trademark. I love
trademarked
that.
it. But it worked for us, and so he didn't have like his own home or anything. He was staying with friends, but he would always, I'd wake up and he would be there, and I'd be like, oh, good morning,
That's so hard when you have such a unique, special relationship, and finding that in co-parenting, and then to see that reduced in an article to a homeless man was shot.
Yeah.
Not that there should be a stigma around whether a person is housed or not, but
Right.
it totally changes the narrative of the person that and
Right.
the way that people are reading that article about someone that your boys love so much and that
Right.
you have a lot of love for.
Yeah.
It's a lot of secondary loss happening there.
Yeah.
With that being out there as public as it was, and did people come at you for interviews or anything like that? How did you navigate all that?
Oh, wow.
It's bad enough to deal with the loss itself, but to have to navigate through all that, I'm just going to say crap. That's
Yeah.
just a lot.
I think that I can't even remember. I'm sure someone had called me or called my mom and gotten some information on him, but there were articles in the paper. They showed up. The news came. After that, there was a memorial at White Rose that we held with all his friends, and he was a chef for 25 years for the Roosevelt Tavern. So he was well known downtown. So I guess he started at Roosevelt Tavern as like a busboy way back when he was late teens. And then he moved to dishwasher. Then he moved to sous chef. And he was there for a really long time. So he was kind of respected in like the restaurant community.
Were you able to shield the boys from all the news?
Yes. I don't think that and I mean, this is all just coming to me now. I don't think that they've read the articles yet. But maybe after this, they're probably going to ask me. They're 16 and 17 today.
I was going to ask. Okay.
Yeah, they're 16 and 17.
Would you be comfortable sharing?
Yes. Yeah. I do have like all of like the funeral program. Like I kept all the cards that came from the school, like all the cards that came in, from the community. I have all of that stuff. They just haven't asked for it yet, so I imagine they will now.
Yeah, I love opening doors like this to those conversations. Yeah. I could even see like my brain just went like one of them goes to art school and for their big graduation project they do something grief related and like it's made out of all the sympathy cards they received, or it's those pieces that is where we find our healing. And so I hope that conversation does happen because it's important too. There's nothing to be hidden. It's just these days go by so quickly and we forget to say, let's talk about these things, or, hey, I never showed you these articles and you're almost young adults. So,
And so in raising the boys through all this, without him, how's that been? Who have you turned to for support?
Wow. So it's a crazy story. When the weekend before he passed away, so I guess it would have been November 3rd, I had my first date with a gentleman named Kevin. We went to the Cove and had dinner, and it was the best first date I had ever had. And then the next day, Sunday, I called him up, said, do you want to go? Because Ed was at the house with the kids because that's how we did our parenting. When it was his weekend, I left. So that next day, I called him, and I said, do you want to go watch football? And he was like, yep. And we did, and so then the next day was Monday. And then on Tuesday, when all of this was happening, my dad, my mom, my cousins, everybody was at my house. And we were just trying to figure out, what to do. And I had brothers that lived out of state. They were coming into town and figuring out all of those logistics. And so, of course, this guy that I had just had 2 first dates with texted me and was like, hi, and I've been thinking about you and can't wait to see you again. And I was like looking at my phone, like, what do I even say to this guy? And I was like, you're not going to believe this, but this tragic thing happened this morning. And he called me right away. And he was like, are you okay? And I'm like, well, no, but I think we'll be okay. And he was like, do you want me to come there right now? And I was like, no. I was like, my dad's here. No, you can't come here.
Not the time to meet Dad for the first time.
No, you can't come here at all. So when any, I think, normal human would have just been like, good luck. Mm-hmm. He, stayed by my side. One of the stories that, so when the people who shot Ed, they shot him and they got in his car and they tried to drive it away. Ed had the key fob for the car in his pocket. So of course, when he ran inside, when you get out of a car that has a key fob, it started blinking and dinging, key not detected. So the people who shot him, they drove the car around the corner and they backed it into, I don't know, between 2 alley garages. And they set the car on fire. And not knowing that cars today are not meant to burn like they do in the movies, that they are meant to smolder. And so about, I would say 5 days later, after all this, the police, York City police, called me and they were like, okay, you can come pick up the car now. We're done processing it. And I was like, I can't pick up the car. It's been burnt. It was on fire. What do you want me to do with the car? And they were like, well, we don't care what you do with the car, but you have to come and get it. And I know. And I was they were just doing their job. And I completely understand. But so right in that moment when I hung up with them, Kevin called me, and he owns a car business here in York. And he was like, "How are you doing?" And, I'm telling him this about the car. And he was like, "I know exactly where it's at. I'll pick it up. Don't worry. I'll take care of it." And I didn't really know much about it because I had so much going on, like trying to figure out funeral and his cremation and all of that. And I found out later that Kevin had taken a roll back over to where they don't process it at the police station. It's like right near York College. It's like this little old fire department.
Okay.
And he went with a rollback and picked up the car, and he kept it in like a locked storage area. And like 2 years later, I married him.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
And he ended up, like behind our backs, he ended up like paying off the car. And he replaced like the headliner in the car and the seats and the console. And our 17-year-old drives that car today.
And there's that chill.
Wow. I felt it too. I was not expecting that at all.
I'm telling you what talk about somebody stepping right in
Yeah.
and being there for you. And because a lot of people can say, "I'm here for you whenever you need me." And then it turns out when it's convenient for them, but the convenience was to be there for you.
Yeah.
And that's what a great part of that bad, sad story.
Yeah. And he's raised them ever since as his own. Like he's stepped in and, they call him Padre or,
I love it.
and that's, like Ed was their daddy, but like Kevin's their dad. And he's raised them and puts up with their teenage antics. And,
my gosh.
they have a really beautiful relationship.
Well, Cari, you just gave us both chills with that story. So, I mean, your wisdom is coming through. Your resilience is clear. What wisdom do you have to give other moms in this situation? You are years down the line. Not that you're perfect, even though you're pretty close, but how have you figured this out? What advice would you give?
One day at a time. That's huge. So a big part of in the moment of like getting through the beginning of the grief, and we did attend Olivia's house, and that program completely changed like the trajectory of our lives. When I didn't know how to speak to the kids, and like I didn't know to explain cremation. Like, when we drove, I remember the first cemetery we drove past, kind of going up Carlisle Road, and they have some pretty big like monuments in there. And I remember Jordan was like, so if my daddy got cremated, is he in there? And I was like, oh, no. And we hadn't gone through the program yet. So I like didn't know, like, what do you say? Like, do you tell them what cremation is? Like, that's a little dark for a 4 and a 5-year-old. So once we finally went through the program, and I figured out, like, through their guidance, how to speak to them. And like, that was a huge part of that. This whole story does have a happy ending, or where we're at today is not where we could have been. I mean, I know that I knew kids growing up who lost parents and, went through very troubled years as a result of it. And I'm not a perfect parent in any way. I guess I can be completely honest here. Like, I did go through many, many years of alcoholism and drug abuse that had started long before Ed even died. So going through a lot of my grief, I drank through it, and I did get sober in 2017. So I've been sober now 7 years, and that was huge.
Yeah, congratulations.
Dealing with grief, like, I can look back now and I can honestly say there were probably days where, and don't take this advice, but, there were days where alcohol really, like, it helped me get through it, but it wasn't the best for dealing with the grief, because it all showed up then, that first year of sobriety for me, and going through and like experiencing those losses again, like for the first time with real emotions. But I can say now, like 7 years later, like every year I'm able to celebrate that I got like Ed gave me 2 beautiful children, capable, good human beings. Like they're good people. So like today I can look at it as like I get to raise his children. And so for the person like going through it, the sooner you deal with it, the sooner, you get through it. Like for the longest time, there was a lot of like, why did this happen to us? Like, why did we? And like today, through my 12-step work and giving back to that community, like I understand why today. Like I meet a lot of women who are only parents and have had to bury, they're the fathers of their kids. And I can say, I get it.
Yeah.
And I can help them through that and in their sobriety journey. So I don't think it's fair still, but I know why. Like I was put here.
Yes. Such a beautiful description of that bereavement process is, going in that numb stage. When those feelings hit, we figure out how to cope. And that is the trick about negative coping skills. They work.
Yeah.
They take the pain away. That's why they're so tricky, but they don't work in the long run. They are just shifting you back to that initial numbness for as long as you can hold out until you have to move forward into healing and find those positive coping skills. And once you've done that work, which it takes years, you are able to reach back your hand and help others. And that is what you are just living and embodying. And that is so cool and a great model for your kids.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cari. All right. Well, I know you mentioned his name, right? Ed Green.
Ed Green.
Okay. So we always like to toast to our guests. So before we toast to Ed, is there any other story you wanted to share? Any other?
It's Ed Green III. I should say that.
Okay.
Good to know.
Edward Leon Green III.
All right. We'll raise a glass to Edward Leon Green III.
Yes.
Thank you
Ed.
so much, Cari. And we'll be back in a moment.
Guess Who Died is brought to you by Olivia's House, a grief and loss center for children. Olivia's House is a community-funded organization that provides comfort and education to families when they need it most, and we are able to keep our doors open thanks to donations from people just like you. Find out ways to support or get support from Olivia's House by visiting www.oliviashouse.org. How many times can we say wow?
Seriously.
I wasn't sure what to expect with this story today.
I know. You and I don't know Cari much prior to this.
No.
So this was all brand new information, and she brought it. She brought quite a story.
And to find herself where she is today and how the boys are doing today after all they've been through since early childhood and the support that she had from a new man in her life and the way things played out. And I think, well, the word we said off the mic was natural.
Yeah.
And chills. We always get chills when we're doing these shows. And there's a moment in each one of our podcasts where we're just, and it happens at the same time for both of us, it seems.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. I mean, but when she told the story about the car, when she is saying, and just this car was burned and, and I know she said it's not like it happened in the movies, but I'm still picturing it like it's happening in the movies. I'm picturing like this car is demolished, totaled, that Kevin's going to pick it up from the lot and he's going to take it straight to the junkyard.
Yeah.
No, he refurbished it and now her current child is driving it. Like that, you and I sat back in our chairs like we had been electrified. Like that's amazing.
My thought was, how long until she looked at the car? Did he ever let her see the car?
I know.
That got answered. We didn't even have
Get
to
her
ask
back on the mic. We have to know. I know. It's incredible the way, the universe will, work things out sometimes for you. But even then, as Cari's telling her story about finding love and about finding her partner, during that was still struggling with those coping skills.
Yeah.
And that is, even we tossed around the word perfect, but it's far from perfect. But it's figuring out how to navigate these things and finding the coping skills for it.
And just find that road for yourself.
Seriously. And Cari is just that resiliency personified. She is the way she's has raised those boys When I called them almost young adults, I think I scared her silly. I saw her face go, "Don't you call them almost young adults." No, they're still boys, still boys. And I hope that them hearing this podcast, if they're still listening, does open up some of those conversations, and they do get to read those news articles.
And find the star.
That's right.
And be a dental hygienist.
That's right. Exactly. And anyone else who's listening, I mean, this is why we do this podcast. If you have a news article somewhere that you haven't shared, or you were listening and thinking, I've never had that conversation with my child either, they're waiting on you to start it.
Have it.
Have that conversation. You know, kids are looking to us to drive this ship. And as much as we don't know what we're doing through the bereavement process, they don't either. And they're hoping that we can help them figure it out. So use this as your inspiration.
And right near the beginning, and as she was saying, she didn't know how to answer the question about cremation.
Yes.
And you just talk about it. Just talk about it.
Yes. Yeah, you just exactly. And that the question about is Daddy in the monument stopped her, to not use the word, but stopped her dead in her tracks. And we're sitting here thinking, the answer's no, Daddy's not in there. When a body is cremated, the cremains get put here, and here's where the cremains are, and you answer their question. But that doesn't come naturally to us when you're in that moment and you're newly bereaved. And so I'm glad that we're able to provide that guidance and reassurance that honesty is key to healing, because you saw how well these boys have turned out.
It was a pleasure meeting her.
It was.
Yeah, all right.
All right, everyone. Tune in next time. Join Jeff, Casey, and myself and find out who died. Guess Who Died is an Olivia's House production, sponsored in part by the M&M Lissauer Family Foundation.